but I didn't know exactly what, and as a result of that, I said it must be bad. How many of you captains in here have called AFPC? All right. Okay, let me do this. How many captains do we have in here? Okay, how many of you actually called AFPC? A couple of you, all right? But that's good, so you can work that interaction. I think the pieces and parts of this has changed over time, and we're becoming much more open and transparent of what's going on. Back in the day, it was all about needs of the Air Force, and you were just a need of the Air Force. Now we're really trying to work, hey, what's the needs of the Air Force, along with the personal needs for you guys, too, an assignment process, or you name it, across the board. So hopefully when you call in, you're calling in and you're getting somebody on the line, and they're working to try to get to an answer that is to get to yes for you as required, okay? So that's why we're here. A lot of good topics to be covered. Who has a cell phone? All right. Who's logged into Meeting Pulse? Okay, if you can, right now, go ahead and jump in and log in. I don't know if there's some questions that are coming up in here. But log into Meeting Pulse on here. And this is your opportunity to ask anonymous questions if you can. I personally like the interaction between all of us in here. So if something comes up, don't hesitate to pop the briefers and say, hey, I got a question right now, and cover it that way. Or you can jump in on Meeting Pulse. What Meeting Pulse does is it gets us a database of all the different questions that you have, and we will try to get to those answers during this roadshow, but the chances of that happening are probably pretty slim. We might get to a few of those. Ultimately, we get that database, and then we get the answers back to you as required, okay? If there's a question that pops up in there, some person asked, and you go, yeah, I got that same question, go ahead and hit the like button, and when you hit the like button, a number of times, there's a top questions piece in there, and those will be the ones that filter up to the top, all right? And so we'll try to do the best we can in answering those particular questions on there, all right? So a great tool. Anybody use this before? Have seen it? Some anonymous question type stuff? I think it's really good. The only drawback that I see is that you guys will be down here doing this the entire time versus kind of paying attention to what's going on with a briefer. So hopefully we don't go down that road and that you still get some good impact of the whole road show. All right. So if we go to the next slide, go to the next slide. Who's heard this from the chief? Okay. Talking about him and the secretary being the bottom of the upside down pyramid, and ultimate his goal is to support you, right? Driving the authorities and the responsibilities down to the lowest level. You've seen policies come down. You've seen waivers to policies come down. You've seen a lot of authorities and responsibilities driving down to the wing commander level, down to the squadron commander level and below. What that means is we're putting those authorities and responsibilities into your hands, which also means, right, that you got to figure this out kind of on your own. Hey, I've got the authority and responsibility. I'm going to go ahead and execute these things. The ability to go out there and take some smart risk on some things. We're not going to get into discussions about smart risk, but I will tell you, a while back, the Air Force is a very risk-averse environment. I grew up in a risk-averse environment. Okay, so as you go down the train and you follow the policy to the letter, and everything's going to go well. I think we're trying to change that a little bit. We're trying to get you guys to think outside the container somewhat, so that you go, hey, is this the right thing to do? Is this the smart thing to do? All right, and it potentially goes against policy out there, but this is the direction that I think we need to take for the Air Force. Then we go down that way and try to get a waiver to that particular policy, or you go up to your leadership and you say, this is what we want to do and the direction that we want to go. And then the hope is, right, that you get the backing, all right, that your leadership then has your back for when you go out there and do this stuff. Make sense? Okay, so that's kind of the chief's vision. Same thing here for the next slide on AFPC. If that's the upside down pyramid, half right there at the bottom portion of that, that would include half A1, and then you see AFPC going in next, commanders and airmen, ultimately driving that up. The key that I showed this particular slide in here is that red line, and that red line between policy and execution. So at AFPC, we are the execution arm, all right, of personnel actions. So ultimately, I've heard this multiple times in the fact that go, hey, why is AFPC's policy to do this? Or why is the policy to do that? When you realize, you look at this chart, you go, AFPC aren't the policymakers, right? We are the execution arm of the personnel policy side of the house. So that's where the half A1 comes into this. So if you have a policy issue, we need to take that up. Most likely you can take some of that stuff up through us, through AFPC, and we'll work it through the A1 side of the house. But ultimately, we're looking at the execution side. So if you have an assignment issue, if you have a retirement issue, if you have a PCS issue, something like that, that's an execution piece, then work it through us at AFPC. All right, that's why I show this, because I know that I used to do that, right, when I was a lieutenant or a captain. This policy that's coming out from AFPC makes absolutely no sense. Well, it's a coordinated effort to get us where we are. And we've got a lot of policy out there, right, that is extremely old, and we're trying to update it. You guys are working through the exact same thing in your organizations from an operations side of the house, too, as well. All right, next slide. So what we're trying to do is become more open and transparent with everything we're doing. Opening up that iron curtain, we're getting out there on the road shows, and we're coming out. This is our 6th road show right now. And we did Europe. We did pretty much most of the CONUS on this trip. We were just in Hawaii. We're coming here, okay? We had the enlisted road show this morning, actually just a couple hours ago. We've got you, the officer side, we've got a civilian one, and we've got your leadership one that's going to come up later this afternoon. Then we're jumping on the road again, going up to Yokota, and then ultimately to Osan before departing on Friday night. So it's a quick trip for us. But we want to get your feedback, all right, on the issues and things that are going on out in the field, at the same time try to present some information that's going on with us, all right? There's the 3 audiences that you see that we're trying to hit up. Next. Along with that being open and transparent is we will send out a bi-weekly message from AFPC out to you guys too as well. Goes to your FSS squadrons on Thursday. Okay, goes to the squadron commander out there. Is she in here by any chance? Was she here before? No? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so they get it on the Thursday. So they have an ability to digest what the pieces and parts from this bi-weekly message that come out. You see some of the things on the right-hand side of big picture items that come out in the bi-weekly message. And then on Friday or Saturday morning, I will send it out to all the wing commanders and AF commanders so that they have an idea of that. Ultimately, with your FSS commander, she has the ability, okay, then to forward that out to the masses as required. Has anybody seen the AFPC biweekly message, yes or no? 1. Awesome. Yeah, go ahead.
So I just want to clear shout out that we sent this out to the sponsors every Friday. People are asking for it, but we, every single Friday, they get the exact same message of this from all of us, covering all personnel applications happening that week.
Yeah, and what I'll say is there's a lot of stuff in here, and probably 90% of it on that particular one that comes out you don't care about. But there might be 1 or 2 nuggets in there, and you've got the ability to flip through it pretty quickly and go, yep, copy, got it, delete. All right? You know, aviation bonus as example, what are we doing on that? What's the way forward? And that might come out in one. You say, okay, here's what it is. Here's the web link that I go to. Got it, and then delete the whole thing. But at least take a little time to go over it. Okay, that's all about being open and transparent. As we move on here, I want to introduce Chief Dan Hoagland. Hoag goes by Hoagie. He's the command chief out here at AFPC. Has been with us roughly about 6 months now, too. So, Chief, over to you.
Thanks, sir. Test. There we go. Hey, does everybody hear me? How's everybody? Welcome to your Air Force Personnel Center Roadshow, the officer edition. I'm just going to tell you this real quick. Next slide. Check that out. Whether we put stripes on, whether we put captain's bars, general stars, or we put suits on them from the civilian side, how's everybody's thoughts on that? You with me? Is that the perception out there? I would agree.
AFPC's done. Yep.
I'm not a personnelist, but I'm absolutely bought into the A1 community. But for 26 years, this is what I thought. The Air Force did nothing but say no to airmen of all ranks, all AFSCs. And what we would do is we would just push DOTIs, AFIs, PSDs, all this down to the lowest level so we would confuse airmen, and they would just give up. And then we wouldn't be transparent when they reached out. It would be a 911 please hold. It would be a CMS case that's out there for 182 days. This is gone. Ladies and gentlemen, if you get anything out of this little 5'6" guy standing up here, this is not the perception of your Air Force Personnel Center. There's roughly about 2,900 steely-eyed warriors, both uniformed and civilians, that absolutely crush the mission and generate wins for airmen and families. The boss alluded to taking risk, smart risk, getting to yes, but the biggest one is giving feedback and giving options to our airmen. So when an airman applies for something, simply saying no is not the case anymore. The team has got to start providing some options moving forward so you and your family can make the best decisions. One thing I do want to foot stomp, as you saw on one of our slides, our bumper sticker or our war cry, agile, innovative, and responsive, fueling the fight, absolutely. We influence and support 1.8 million active guard retirees and active in reserve and guard and retirees around the globe. But the responsive piece, we got to do a lot better. And I'll be honest with you, we do. The team has got to do a lot better. But what I want to foot stomp on that is we have some offices, and this is not throwing down saying that we are not resourced right or we don't have the money to do it. I'm not saying that. But we have a couple of offices that there's only 1 or 2 airmen that cover down on about 29,000 personnel actions for an AFSC. About 55,000 transactions every week through the center. So have a little patience with us. Trust the system because it does work. And be candid and get in your foxholes and be to the left of bang. What I mean by the left of bang is if you have an airman that is coming up with an issue, let's get in front of it and start socializing options and different means that we can go forward with the team. Make sense? All right, with further ado, I want to hand it off to an incredible teammate, seasoned expert, Colonel Julie Boyd. Let's give it up for her. Whoop, whoop.
He's trouble. Okay. All right. Good afternoon. As he said, I'm Colonel Julie Boyd. I'm the Director for Military Personnel Operations at your Air Force's Personnel Center. And it really is a great pleasure for me to be back in PACAF. I was the PACAF A1 for 4 years before coming to AFPC. So this theater has a warm place in my heart. So, and Kadeen in particular, awesome mission, awesome people. So it's really great to be here with all of you today. And we're hoping to have a conversation with you, especially with the small group dynamics that we were able to have here. Even though we have the meeting pulses firing up really well, thank you for that. But we can do the old-fashioned way, raise your hand, and we can ask questions and interact this way. But also at the end, if you have questions that maybe are just apply to you, you can kind of swarm us at the end. Your enlisted counterparts definitely did that earlier today. And that's why we're here, because we do want to hear from you in those individual cases so we can work them for you. So again, as General Toth talks about openness and transparency, that's why we're here. So next slide. Who's heard of this? Anybody? Heard of our new course that we just stood up about a year ago? Anybody show of hands? Okay, awesome. A few of you have heard about it. Are you hearing anything good? What are you hearing, some of you? What are you hearing?
Airborne Air Control Squadron. I've had a couple of friends that had the opportunity to go to this. I was actually signed up for one of those classes. I couldn't end up going to it. It sounds like it's been one of the most beneficial training for leaders that guys have gone to.
Thank you for that. And I did not ask him to say anything either. So thank you for that plug. Gave me chills a little bit. We're working so hard in this class because we want to, again, it's all about revitalizing the squadrons. So, after about a 6-year hiatus due to sequestration, we stood it back up. And based on feedback, we added superintendents a couple of classes ago, which is a first because we never had that before. And so we put a plug in the enlisted call earlier. That's going really, really well too. So bottom line of bringing it up in this forum is we wanted you to be aware of it. And if you're commander, future commander, or if maybe you're squadron superintendent, let them know about this because it's a great opportunity for them to come down and talk talent management specifics with subject matter experts in our building. They get to go see the promotion board secretariat, which is kind of cool. They get to go sit down and actually sit in the cube spaces for their assignment officers and their assignment NCOs. They get to do a mock enlisted force distribution panel and have just a really great learning environment there with non-attribution. Countless good ideas there that we get feedback from the field. So it's goodness. And we have 8 classes scheduled for next year. It's already out there. So just contact your MAJCOM A1 if you're interested. Yes? And we did have a DO in the last class, just so you know. So, yeah, it says squadron commander and superintendents, but honestly, we'll take anybody. But we do usually have a wait list because the word's getting out and it is pretty popular.
Nobody in here is attending, right? Okay. So here's the deal with that, right? Maxwell offers a leadership course, right, which is a leadership course that is before DO. So you have an opportunity to learn about those leadership things that are going on. I think that's a 2-week course that they put on as well. And then your MAGCOMs, as you guys get older, right, will put on their squadron commander course, and that is mission focused, all right? So as this continues to mature and you guys continue to move on to your career, this particular course is much more focused on the personnel side of the house. So dollar, it's the things that you wish you had, all right, as you rolled in to become a squadron commander from the personnel side. And this is the only place that you actually get those things, okay?
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
Next slide. Anybody tracking us on social media? By chance, by show of hands? Okay, a couple of hands. That's great. Well, I encourage you to go out there and check it out, both on YouTube and on Facebook. It's best viewed in Google Chrome. Lots of really good information out there. As you mentor your airmen and your units, officer, enlisted, and civilian topics on all of these, just a few examples there. 100 plus videos and growing. In fact, the last Roadshow we had 80 plus, now we have 100 plus, and in part it's because of great feedback from all of you. Hey, it'd be great if we had a video or some kind of tutorial on this new senior NCO promotion process, right, that we're getting ready to kick off. We actually are kicking it off on the chief's side, right, first this month. And people have questions. What does that mean? What's changed? Well, there's videos and there's documents out there that you can look at and pull down and talk with your airmen about it, because it's on their mind, I guarantee you. In fact, they asked last session in the town hall about that process. So encourage you to go out there. Same thing, a couple of you asked about the new developmental category change for our line of the Air Force officers. There's a 23-minute video out there that explains the why. Well, how did we get here? All of that. That'd be a great mentoring session. You can sit down with the folks in your unit and say, let's watch it and then talk about it and ask questions and make sure you have good understanding. It's just another tool for you to get the latest and greatest on these various talent management programs. And again, it's our effort to be as open and transparent as we can with the field and put everything that we do know and we have the latest and greatest out there on the website. So next slide is a quick screenshot of what it looks like. Lots of subscribers. We'd love to have more. Encourage you to go out and check it out. We do have a really quick video, and it's about our Total Force Service Center. Okay. So again, I wasn't going to say minutes, a few seconds, but tutorials are out there as well. And I wanted to put a quick plug for the Total Force Service Centers because it is 24/7 operation. I know over here in Westpac, you don't have a lot of overlap with the duty hours of our AFPC team, but except for the fact that the Total Force Service Center is available to you all but 4 days of a year. So encourage you, put in a plug for that, and they can get you to the right subject matter experts when we're open for business there. General, anything to add?
I think you got it. Thanks.
Okay, all right. So this next slide, I want to hand it back over to Chief Hoagland because he's very passionate about it, and he's just fun to listen to. So, Chief?
And short. Hey, how many of you all in here are flight commanders or directly lead airmen? So, do me a favor. Take out your phone and take a picture of this if you have not been to My Air Force Benefits. I'll tell you the reason why. You have a lot of enlisted and officer airmen that are either separating or retiring from the United States Air Force, and they're going out on, say, Apple or iTunes or whatever we have out there, and they're spending about $5 on calculators, retirement calculators, and other beneficial things, investment things, and whatnot. I will tell you, when they log into this bad boy, it actually hooks from MilPDS, so it's going to have your total active, your HYT, what retirement plan you're in, all the way down to the cent. So you can save your airmen a little bit of money. But I'll tell you what's really cool about this, you as a flight commander, as we get after resiliency and getting down in the weeds with our airmen and touch points, is there's 150 fact sheets out here on this website dealing with compensation, deployment benefits, separation benefits, things that your airmen are going through right now that you can snag, get in the foxhole, put them around the table, and have a little bit of discussion on what's going on with their life. What's also really cool with this website is it's ran 24/7 by contractors behind the scenes. So if you run into any issues, pick up the phone, call them. If there's other fact sheets that you want, or if you're hearing different data, they're there to support. Now, I do have to foot stop. We are the greatest Air Force to ever roam the face of the planet. Unfortunately, your Air Force My Benefits page rides on an Army URL right now. So if you go out and you use the Googler, it's going to come up with an Army piece. Just look to the left, and you'll see U.S. Air Force. That is the one that we go to. So please use this link as we're working by with and through half A6 CIO to get it onto an Air Force One. But it's a fantastic website. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that.
Okay, next slide, please. Let me tell you what. There's been a ton of stuff going on in officer talent management the last 18 months. Am I right? Lots of stuff. And in our world, it's fast and furious and tons of it, but it's exciting. And I think it's much needed changes and much needed reform that we've got going on. We wanted to start off with this slide, just kind of give you a strategic view of where we've been and where we're heading. And starting off with Talent Marketplace. So who's heard of Talent Marketplace? Oh, awesome. That's excellent. In fact, you're going to have a demo here in a minute by Captain Hazan. We're going to talk about that here in a second, so I don't want to steal his thunder. But just to let you know, it's part of an overall strategy on officer talent management reform, and we started off with Talent Marketplace. Next one is Officer, Instructor, and Recruiting Special Duty. Who's heard of this? Les? Anybody in here apply for it by chance? Okay, one. Just the one? Oh, there's one over there too. Excellent. So we'll talk a little bit about that this morning too. But not just for the people who have applied, but also going forward, what's the plan? What's the next major milestone so you guys can be tracking it? We do want to emphasize it because it's so important that we put the right individuals into these really important, we're shaping our future Air Force with these positions. So we want to make sure we send the right quality of officers to it. So we've created a whole new process starting with this year, and I'll talk about that here in a minute. Also part of the overall talent management reform strategy is the potential focus, also known as the two-line PRF. Anybody in here written one yet? A two-line PRF? Only just a couple of hands. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about that, kind of why we changed from the 9-line to the 2-line, and also get your feedback and also share with you the feedback we've gotten from the first set of boards that have gone through and have used this new form as part of the evaluation process for determining who should get promoted. So we'll talk about that. Developmental categories. I know there was a question on Meeting Pulse. Anybody who's heard of this? Big change for our line of the Air Force? Good, good. Yes, it's official, guys, and we'll show you kind of the bottom line is where are we at now, because it's been officially announced a week ago that we are transforming our line of the Air Force developmental category to 6 distinct developmental categories, and we'll show you a slide on that. And then finally, and this is more to come, and we don't have an actual slide on it, but maybe we can have a quick discussion on it, is there is plans to overhaul our officer evaluation system, our OPR. Most definitely, lots of discussions. We're having some focus groups, working through that with a contractor. There's a lot to come on this particular effort. More towards the late of next year, because it's a heavy lift, but it is coming. Things like officer squads are being thought about and discussed about. That's part of the conversation. You know, what do we value? It kind of gets to what Chief Hoagland was talking about with our enlisted force. You know, maybe aligning those with the major graded areas that we have in our inspection system. These are all the types of things that are being discussed with regards to this really important part of the overall strategy. Okay? So, yes, sir.
Because that was a question you guys brought up, right? And it's got like 10 likes already. So I think she hit the nail on the head on this whole thing. But ultimately, who's seen a Army officer evaluation report or Navy? And what's the difference between theirs and ours? You guys know? What's it? Well, you got a senior rater profile, one, and the other piece, it's much more objective, right? So they get a scoring system in there, where what we have in ours right now is a stratification. My number 1 of 14 majors age 33 and under, right? As a stratification. I've seen it before, trust me. And I actually took a photocopy of that when I was sitting on a board one time, and I keep it and I actually mentioned it. So our stratification sometimes doesn't come out to be really a stratification process. So the intent behind this, and like what Julie is talking about, we're getting on the road over the course of the next year to make it much more objective based. In other words, you're going to get a score on there on a scale. I don't know if it's 0 to 7, all right, 1 to 7, 1 to 10, what it's going to be over the 4 major graded areas in there. And then we're going to have subgrading underneath those two as well. And so your rater is going to go in there and rate you. Okay, you're a 5, you're a 4, you're a 6, you're a 3, you're a whatever on each one of these particular areas. As they work through that, all right, you mentioned the part about the officer or the rater having their evaluation, what did you call it? The senior rater profile in there. So I get the profile of how I graded you, right? If the Air Force average is out there at, say, about a 4.5 for all of our airmen, okay, and then the scale's 1 to 7, and drifter is a far to the right, and I rate everybody out as a 7, guess what happens to their overall ratings? They drop down to about a 4.5, okay? So I do a disservice to all the airmen that are working for me. So as the senior rater profile that gets in there, it's good for me to have a bell curve in there as well, right? Some are down in the 1 to 2 range, hopefully not too many, but right, some are up there in the 7, but most are right there in the middle. So that when I give somebody a 7, my profile says my average is right there with the Air Force average at about a 4.5. And when I give somebody a 7, what's that mean? They actually earn that 7. Same thing if I give somebody a 2 or a 3. So the intent is this to be much more objective, which ties into all the rest of this other stuff. The 2-line PRF, right, is the ability for, I'm stealing this a little bit, the ability for the senior rater to have their 1-line comment, and then for the folks that are sitting on the board to look through the entire record, and it's records based. That ties in with the new officer evaluation system too as well, and along with the developmental categories that we're going to talk about. All of that is interlinked. This new OES is the last portion of that link. Okay?
Awesome. Thank you, sir. Okay, so without further ado, let's do a quick demo. Next slide. On Talent Marketplace. So I want to introduce Captain Paul Hassan.
All right.
Hi, everyone. I'm Paul Hazan. I work at AFPC, Talent Marketplace, Assignment System Development. So as you saw from the previous slide, Talent Marketplace, a lot of y'all are familiar. I saw a lot of hands go up. It's that new web-based application that we've been working on with our developers to refine and to roll out to replace assignment management system. That system is over 20 years old. So the officer assignment system needed some revamping, and you've seen that with Talent Marketplace. So while he's working on pulling up the slides, we're not going to, can we go back to the slides before we hit the demo? Thanks, Clay. Next slide. Okay. So what it does, as I said, it's officer assignment system. So if you are a billet owner and you need a fill action, what we call a requisition to happen, that's the system that billet owners can go out there and submit a requisition for any fill actions that need to happen. And also with that, it increases transparency out to the field for you all, for knowing if you are on the VML and for whatever positions are available that you could apply to fill if you are on the VML as an officer. And it also allows you to go out there and to put your preferences, to update your preferences while the window is open. So right now, if you are on the summer 2020 assignment cycle, how many people are on the summer 2020 assignment cycle? Okay, so we got a few. So that's what that demo will show you. You're probably familiar if you've already gone out there into Talent Marketplace with using it, but we'll show you a quick demo of how to get in there and do that. And then, so where this system is really different from the previous system is that for the first time it allows billet owners to go out there and to bid on officers that they are interested in hiring into their position. So that's what's really different about this system. What it's not going to do, it's not going to completely automate the assignment process. There's still a lot of TLC that goes into matching officers to vacant positions. Those assignment officers at AFPC do put a lot of TLC into that. And so it's also not going to just be 100% right these first iterations. We're working on rapidly developing and deploying this system right now. Next slide. Okay, so what we got going on currently is the officer, instructor, and recruiting special duty. There was a question in the meeting pulse about that. It is going pretty well. They're finalizing the matches. We had about 700 candidates make the list and about 350 positions out there that were matched. And those results are going to come out in November through the PSDM. So those people will know what jobs they got out there. And then so where we are currently is we got that summer 20 assignment cycle going on right now. You still have till the end of this month, if you're on the VML, to log into Talent Marketplace and to update your preferences. And for billet owners, you will have until the 7th of November to go out there and to submit any bids on officers you're interested in hiring into those positions. All right, and so yes, this has been the largest cycle that we've seen to date. Over 9,000 officers made it to the final VML. And so we have kind of tracked a few stats on the previous 3 cycles with Talent Marketplace. It's fairly new. Are these stats good or not? We don't know because, as I said before, we haven't had the capability for billet owners to go out there and bid on officers that they're interested in hiring to positions. So what we've kind of also seen is there's been some cases where people were bidding on or volunteering for jobs they necessarily weren't qualified for. So what we've launched with this current assignment cycle, and it's being beta tested by a few officer assignment teams, is assignment cycle vectors. So I know, for example, I'm a 38F. The 38F assignment team, they created assignment cycle vectors for every one of their officers on the VML. Things like flight command, OPSO, staff. So you'll be able to see that in your profile if your assignments team is actually loaded a vector on you. The billet owner can see it as well, all right? And so what we got going on future state of Talent Marketplace, we will be advertising 365-day deployments and hot jobs in Talent Marketplace. We are beta testing that right now. We have the COPS, 38Fs, and 21As in there who've advertised some positions out there that we actually have people volunteering for. And so this bumper sticker that you see right there, that's the short tour vulnerability indicator that's also coming down the road. This was a go-do from Lieutenant General Kelly, the A1. He wants, this ties into transparency, and he wants the field to know where they fall on a 1 to N list for short tour vulnerability. And so that's coming soon. And we also have enlisted assignments that would be their assignments. Some of the enlisted assignments, the DSD assignments, will be advertised in Talent Marketplace down the road soon. We did conduct a beta test with a TACP career field, and we found out a lot of good information from them using it. Yes, we have a question over here.
So Major Jeffrey Garst, I'm flight surgeon for 31st Rescue Squadron here. In a bit of a unique position, but this may apply to other people who are maybe doing similar things. I'm a GMO applying for residency this cycle, and our match results come out in December for graduate medical education. I went ahead and filled out, everything on Talent Marketplace. If I match to a graduate medical education slot, how is that affected in the marketplace? What's taken into consideration? Contingency plan is to continue my current assignment. So wondering, should I go through the Talent Marketplace to do that, or should I coordinate that between my command and my assignments officer?
So your contingency plan is to stay?
Yes, sir.
In the position, so you need to jump on, if you're coming up on that assignment cycle, just jump into Talent Marketplace and go ahead and put that in there and put your preferences in as required, right?
Yes, sir, I did
You get
that.
picked up by school, all right, then that will be the job that you end up getting, okay? And then we'll go punt from an assignments perspective to put somebody else in your particular position. If you've got some other thing that you're trying to work and coordinate, then what you need to do is work that through your squadron commander and up through the chain of command, and then we'll work that back through the assignments chain so that they can take a note on that and put that into your kind of assignments record and the system that we have that's called Millennium out there.
All right.
As far as the assignments for summer of 20 go, right? We're not going to release anything until January. So by the time he's got the up there from the 7th of November, right, through the beginning and most of January, we're going to be working those matches. So that'll be the overall game plan, and then we should release that at the end of January, what the release is. Okay, does that make sense?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. So while you're still going through some of this stuff and getting ready to put the demo on, there's a question in here is when I should start working with the AFPC, right, on my assignment as I get on the VML. Here's my preference to what you do, okay? And here's what we're going to tell the leadership as well. We need your involvement, all of you. Any JAGs in here? Okay? We need your involvement in Talent Marketplace. Okay, and so what that means, if you know you're coming up on the VML, then what I need you to do is go to your squadron commander and ask for some mentorship about what type of positions I should apply for, all right, on that particular VML. This is a software program. It's not going to prevent, right now, all right, a lieutenant for applying for 4 different DO jobs across the board, all right? Or it's not going to prevent you for applying for every single position that's out there at Ramstein. And then you wonder why I didn't get my, my assignment preference in there because you put 10 at Ramstein and this was a consecutive overseas tour or something, all right, would have caused the problems in there. So the piece I'd like you to do first, get with your squadron commander, sit down and go, okay, this is my flow plan. This is what the squadron commander is recommending that I go do. And it matches in line with what some of my preferences are. Then go into a talent marketplace and start looking for those jobs. For those of you on the summer cycle, you've got exactly, I don't know when the 31st is, but you've got the 31st of October to go ahead and do that piece. And if you're one of those individuals in the summer cycle that put, one location with every single assignment in there, I'd fair to say go back and change that for you right now. Paul's going to talk about some other things in here about, hey, we got 15 volunteers at this one particular place and none at another one. And if that's your preference, you may want to do some switching in there. But ultimately, get your squadron commander involvement in here before you go into the talent marketplace side of the house. Okay?
Thanks, sir. All right, and some other future things we got going on with talent marketplaces is TFI. We will have the reserves in there eventually and the guard. Doing their assignments in there as well. We have to work through some policy before we can execute at our level to make the system work for them. And then we have just launched recently a portion of the ADP, the perpetual location preferences. That piece of the ADP is in Talent Marketplace now. So you will see an assignment that says out of cycle preferences. You can go into Talent Marketplace and you can update 8 CONUS locations and 8 OCONUS locations in Talent Marketplace, and that will be used for potential out-of-cycle matches to positions. All right, next slide. Okay, and these are just a few frequently asked questions that we'll hit on as we go through the demo. So yes, all the jobs. Can you pull up the demo, Ray? But yeah, to start with, all the jobs are out on Talent Marketplace that have been validated. Those requisitions that have been submitted by billet owners, validated through the management level and the assignments teams, those have all been advertised and listed in Talent Marketplace. So,
that have used Talent Marketplace, how many of you don't think that all the jobs are advertised? Okay? And why is that? Why are you thinking that? We don't need the microphone, huh? Okay, with a little different scenario potential in there. Yeah. Uh-huh. Yep. Okay, so we're making the transition there. Who else? Who else? Yeah.
Sir, what I've noticed is you can find all the jobs, but you can't bid for all the jobs.
Why is that?
The way I understood it was the jobs that you're allowed to bid for are the ones that are given to your functional team.
Okay, so I want to quell some perceptions out there, right? Because one of the perception is, hey, we're not putting all the assignments out there and we're holding back at AFPC. All right, some of these assignments for special individuals. That is not the case, okay? So don't think that. What you're getting to a little bit on here is what happens first, all right, is our billet owners provide a requisition, okay? You're leaving your job and they need to fill that. So they go, here's the jobs we're requisitioning for. You're probably going to get into some of that, Paul, but ultimately that goes into the system. These are the ones that we're looking for. Sometimes what happens, right, and they do that and they go, once we get all the requisition set, we advertise all of those positions, okay? We don't hold anything back, the ones that we're going to requisition for. Some fall below the line. We don't have enough manpower to go around across the entire Air Force, right? That some are going to fall below the line. We're never going to advertise them, and we're not going to fill them, okay? But every other one goes into the system that way. Here's what's happened. An individual will go into the system and they'll say, okay, here's all the jobs that are available. And then they'll go back in a week later and they'll say, why wasn't that job in there a week ago? What's going on at AFPC? They're holding back on us. So what happens sometimes is we get the late requisition, all right, that rolls in there. It's like, dadgummit, that's a late requisition. Okay, let's put that back in there, and we put it back into the system for individuals to follow on. It is not that we're holding back on any of the positions, okay? Make sense? So everything should be there. If you're seeing something different from that for the field, please let me know, all right, and we'll correct it.
All right, I want to do some quick just-in-time training for the officers in here who are on the VML. So when you log into Talent Marketplace, you need to make sure that you have a MyVector profile. That's the first step. And then from there, this is what the page will look like. And then so you'll go to the tile that says My Intent and Preferences. So can you go ahead and scroll, Clay? All right, so that tile right there, that'll be open if you're on the VML and you're within the window. So it's important that you pay attention to the Air Force Officer Assignment System timeline. You can find that out on MyPERS. And so this is what it'll look like when you log in. It's got some information about your profile up here at the top, duty information. If you see anything that's incorrect with that, you'll have to work with your local MPF or CSS to get that stuff updated in MilPDS, and it'll flow over into Talent Marketplace. Keep scrolling, Clay. All right, this is what's important. So you'll want to make sure on this screen, laser pointer's not working, but you'll just want to make sure that you update your losing commander, because that's important. That's the person who's going to go ahead and be able to put comments on you from a losing commander's perspective. So you'll want to make sure you update that and identify that person accordingly. All right, go ahead, next page, continue. All right, and then from there, we have about 12 global assignment intent questions, some yes or no questions. There's also a free text question towards the bottom, but they ask questions like, are you interested in overseas long tour, short tour? Are you joint spouse? Things of that nature. And your assignments team that manages your career field also has the ability to create assignment intent questions that are specific to your career field. Things like, I'm interested in being a 4-ship flight lead if you're a flyer, or if you're a 38F, I'm interested in being a SARC, things of that nature. All right, go ahead and click continue. All right, and this is where you would do the 1 to 5-star rating on the locations that have been advertised out in Talent Marketplace. So it's very similar to Yelp, 1 star being not desired, highly not desired, 5-star highly desired. And there's some filters that you can apply on this page, but that's pretty much it. Go ahead and click continue. All right, and this is where you can go ahead and search all the billets that have been advertised by your assignments team that are out there on the cycle. So in this case, you can see that there's 241 billets available to the fighters on this VML. This is all fictitious data. This is just our test site. But so on the left-hand side there, you can apply filters if you're looking for a captain position. Go ahead and click on captain, Clay. So it narrows it down, filters it down, and then if you're interested in the jobs, let's just say by region, you can go ahead and click on the filter in Europe, the one that says 29, all right? And filter it down that way to kind of narrow down the potential positions you're interested in. And then scroll down, All right, and so it filters that down, and then if you want to add it to your favorite, you would just simply star on the right-hand side that position. All right, and click continue, Clay. And then this next screen is where you get to the final rack and stack of your preferences that you're interested in applying to these jobs. So as you can see on that second line right there, there's 16 people who have that position favorited. There's 3 other people who have it in their top 3, and there's 1 other person who has it, or that person is, in this case, the only person who has it as their number 1. Now, this data is real time while the window's open. So as the general was talking about, this is kind of what you got to pay attention to help you manage expectations. If there's a really popular position out there, you'll probably want to add some other positions to your preference list before submitting. All right, so, and if you want to change this, you can do a simple drag and drop, drag the number 2 up to the number 1, and that data changes real time while the window is open. All right, so that's pretty much it in a nutshell from the VML officer's perspective. All right, and that's all I got, unless there's any other questions.
Yeah, questions you guys got? Go ahead, just ask it. We don't need to hand the mic around.
So you talked about the bid process being the new piece of component.
Yeah, so there's no limit on the number of bids that a billet owner can submit on officers out there, and there's also no limit that VML officers can submit on preferences. The bidding, we've seen in the past it's about 10 that billet owners submit, about 10 bids.
Okay, yeah, so, and then there's also the senior leader request, okay? Do you know what that is? So ultimately, if I'm a billet owner and I want a particular, you guys have heard the old by name request, right? I want a particular individual, you can put a flag in there, all right, say I am bidding on this particular individual, and that's a senior leader request that goes in. We've asked our billet owners to use those things sparingly, right? Because if everybody goes in and puts a senior leader request for every single one of their positions, right, we're not going to be able to fill that across the board. The other part is losing commanders, right? Have the opportunity to put losing commanders comments in there. I don't know if you're going to talk about this, to say, here's my individual, right? Some people will put a stratification, my number 1 of 6 CGOs on this particular VML. My recommendation is for this particular type job. So the billet owners now can go back and take a look. If you volunteered in there, they can also see the losing commanders comments to say, yeah, that looks like this would potentially be a great match that goes out there, all right? So the question I got to you is this going to guarantee you that you're going to get one of your top 2, 3, 4 positions? No. I'm glad you guys are saying that, right? Ultimately, though, what it does is it helps us, all right, saying this is what you would really like to do, and the billet owners doing the exact same thing. That's where I say I need your squadron commanders in there to mentor you a little bit on the positions. And if we do all that and we start putting those pieces and parts together, those percentages that you see and the match rates are going to continue to go up. And they're going to go up to, say, the 75% rate. I don't know exactly what that's going to be. You guys are also smart enough to know, hey, I'm hot for a remote assignment. I'm going to put my number 1 is, every other location except for a remote assignment. And you can have 15 bids in there on different assignments. And guess what? You end up with a remote assignment. All right? Well, I think you're smart enough to know where you're at and go, okay, maybe I should volunteer potentially for a remote assignment. That's where some of that coordination with your squadron commander comes in. So our action officers take this. This is about 75% of the data, plus they have a couple other spreadsheets, right? The DTs get involved a little bit on some officer professional development portions of that, and then what the overall career field looks like to try to make the matches as close as possible, okay? So just heads up for that. This is really good news on the piece that's coming in for 365s and for remotes. You log in on a VML, the intent is that you get a pop-up saying, says you're hot for a 365. Ultimately, if you're hot for a 365, you go, would you like to volunteer for one? You can probably say yes or no. If you go yes, then a list, not there yet, comes up for your AFSC of here's the 365s. We do that. The hope is, right, that reduce the number of reclamas that come in or the 7-day ops, those type of things, and then you're fulfilling your role and requirement in our Air Force process. Same thing for the remote assignments that come up in there. All right? What other questions you guys got on the talent marketplace piece?
Yeah.
Because I know there's probably some.
Not all the billets. Thank you. So not all the billets are visible just because there's not a requisition there for that yet. Is there any thought to allowing us to see how many requisites there are for such and such position and putting them all there so that when there's a last minute request, your preferences still reflect that? And then, so for example, there's been multiple VMLs where positions open up about a week and a half before final assignments are made, but everybody's preferences are locked in, and it's basically word of mouth. If you hear about it, you can go ask about it, but your preferences reflect only the billets that were there a month ago. And then an assignment that you wanted has now been given to someone else because you didn't even compete for it.
Yeah. So I'll kind of address that the same way I did before, right? I think this is a team effort in getting this whole thing, right? Our billet owners have to put the requisition in. They have a cutoff when the requisitions are supposed to go in. There is no doubt about that. 95% of the time, that happens exactly as advertised, all right? 5% of the time, or even less, someone comes in and goes, hey, I wasn't expecting X individual to leave or whatever. Somebody may be going to school. So there's all these other conflicts that come in. Or officer, instructor, recruiter duty. Wasn't expecting somebody to leave, and now they're going to go do all RSD. Oh, I've got a requisition for that particular billet, and it makes it above the cut line. Then we have to put that into the system. And sometimes it does come out, a week and a half prior to the end. I will tell you there's probably enough assignments out there across the board that these 1 and 2 type things aren't that significant. It was sounds like it was a significant emotional event for you at one time or another. But my recommendation is then if you're on that VML, okay, and you've already put your preferences in, put them at the beginning, go back and recheck it 2 weeks into it, right prior to the end of the VML, go back and check and see what there's opportunities to do that. Once it locks down, okay, the system is locked down, and then the billet owners have 1 week, all right, to start pulling requisitions as required, or start bidding on folks as required. Make sense? It probably doesn't get you fully at that answer. Something we took a look at, we're not there yet, is, hey, maybe advertise. If we get something that's late, this is a software piece, right? If we get something that's late, just to let everybody know in that career field, if you're on that VML, heads up, there's another position that's been added if you're interested in. And that could be a message.
Yes,
that
sir.
goes
We
out to
still
the field.
do hot jobs. Some people may have seen targeted messages that are out to certain AFSCs if there's either a out of cycle type of position or a job that we just haven't gotten volunteers for, but we're always looking for it. We'd much rather fill it with a volunteer. So we still do have that process, sir,
Okay,
for
great.
emerging requirements.
Any other questions? Yep.
So I do have a question with jobs like for race positions and staff positions. I've seen before where it says any way officer will fill this slot, but there's no way to bid on that position. It's not a specific M&M or specific so on and so forth that is given to your assignment position.
You want to address that?
Yeah. So if the manning supports within your career field and it's allowed that your AFSC could fill that job, then your assignments team will advertise that position and show it to you. You should be able to see that out in Talent Marketplace.
Yeah, that's new, okay? Ultimately, you're absolutely right. If it wasn't for a particular AFSC, i.e. multiple AFSCs could fill it. Initially, we started out, it was for a particular AFSC. We've expanded, we're continuing to expand it, say, hey, all AFSCs can do this, so we're getting that out in Talent Marketplace right now to get it across the board. And then as you know, right, from staff positions, okay, we're not filling them like we are filling you guys at an ops level. Our staff manning is about 59% across the board, which is extremely low. Why? Because we need folks out in the field doing exactly what you guys are out there doing. So we're trying to man you, right? You guys have heard the readiness review and where we're trying to go with that, and pacing units and all those type of things. That's to get the individuals out here so that we're manning you at 100%, and we're sacrificing the staff right now. End strength, for the Air Force is growing. You guys heard that piece too as well. So we're looking at going 332,000 across the board. We're roughly around 331,000. We're actually higher than we need to be at this time of year. So we're working through some issues funding-wise to make sure that we have enough money at the end of the year to pay for the number of folks that we've got in here too. That's a complete sidebar, but hopefully that gets after your question. Yep.
Any other questions? All right, that's all I got. Next slide. Oh, one more.
Yes, it can. All right, you're right. It's potentially going to do that, right? But we're not doing the matching process, okay, until after the OIRSD has come out. So ultimately, you go through. Did you apply for OIRSD? Okay, and you're also on the VML. Okay, so ultimately, go into the program, right, and volunteer for your positions. There's no guarantee you're going to get the OIR and SD, right? If you do, okay, that's fantastic, and that's exactly what we need you to do. We need you out there building the foundation of our Air Force. And we got to get the right folks that are going out there and doing that. That will take priority 9 times out of 10, unless we're trying to fit you into a DO job or potential squadron commander job or something like that in the future. So the key is to go ahead and get into Talent Marketplace, put your preferences in there, and then the hope when this comes out that you do get matched to something that you're looking for, OIRSD. And if you do that, you will come off the VML, and our action officers will not actually match you. Does that make sense? So there's timing pieces, right? We don't have it 100% perfect. Okay, we're moving DTs around. We're moving boards around to try to work this adjustment as we're looking, at the officer system as a whole. And we're finding we do have gaps and seams in there, and that's one of those gaps and seams that we have. Okay, first time we did the OIRSD, and I think we're pushing this to the left.
Yes, sir, we are.
Next year. All right, so it's going to be coming up to the left, so it'll come out sooner. Okay.
Any other questions for Captain Hazan? Okay, great. Next slide, please. Okay, speaking of OIR and SD, only a couple of you had applied for it. Just to give perspective, we had about 1,300 volunteers for this program, for this inaugural process that we had this year, which was really great news, for about 380 requirements. So we had plenty of volunteers. The process is nominative now, and we ask officers to volunteer. And so I'm just going to walk you through the overall process so you know what's going to happen. Since many of you didn't raise your hand that you applied this year, I'm going to talk about next year and kind of so if you're interested in doing one of these programs, which are those ROTC detachment commanders, 81 Charlies, 81 Tangos, these AFPCs at the top, that's what we're talking about with this program. So the first step is you want to do this. So you go out into My Vector and you apply. And your senior rater, in this case for many of you it's the 18th Wing Commander, has a target of about 15% that he should nominate to this process. To either serve as a USAFA instructor, be a recruiter, serve as an ROTC instructor, work down at OTS or an area university. These are the type of opportunities we're talking about. So the senior rater determines that you are the type of individual that we want serving in these roles, and so then they nominate you to this central board process, which is the center part. There's a screening process that is past year, it was led by Lieutenant General Cotton, who is the Air University Commander, and he had chaired it with USAFA and all these reps that you see in the membership column there, SOS, ACSE. It's not your standard board. It's the stakeholders that have a vested interest in making sure that the officers that go forward as candidates for this process are suitable for these type of roles. The output is a candidate list, which I'm sure you were on. I saw your name over there. You were on there, and that became the VML. And we worked it in Talent Marketplace for the first time ever. And you participated in Talent Marketplace under that role, right? Absolutely. And the same thing will happen next year. So right now, we've gotten all the inputs from the members themselves that came out as candidates. And we've gotten inputs from the stakeholders who bid on those officers. And now we're adjudicating all of those. Because we have stakeholders that, an ROTC detachment may want to hire the same person that also the SOS commandant wants to hire. And so we're adjudicating all of that based on the members' preferences and based on the billet owners who they want. So that's not an easy process, but that's what we've been doing. And what we're expecting to see is before Thanksgiving, the outcome, the results. You are going to teach SOS, those kinds of answers. Those are going to be coming out before Thanksgiving is our goal. As General Toth talked about, some people are on the summer VML as well. But as he mentioned, the matching process will have just started for the summer VML. And I assure you that our assignment officers are well aware of where you stand on the OI and our SD process. Wow, and they have the good situational awareness of that before they proceed on matching for normal summer assignments. Next slide, please. I think one of the reasons we got a good amount of volunteers, 1,300, let me just give you a quick snapshot. For ROTC detachment commanders, previous years we might get maybe 100 volunteers to do that. This year we had 380 people put in their name in the hat for this particular opportunity. That's a huge improvement, and that's good because that means that we have more people interested, we have higher quality, and that's the objective. I think part of it is because of the institutional and the individual incentives that came with this program. Have you guys heard of that? For those of you who'd heard of it, have you heard about the incentives piece of it? Not too many. Okay. But the enterprise incentives is indicating to the promotion boards through the Secretary of the Air Force Memorandum of Instruction that we value these type of roles, that we value officers that have served in these roles in support of our United States Air Force. Highlighting those same things in not only the instruction, but also on the selection brief that is presented to the board. So starting in the March 2020 board, the Lieutenant Colonel line of the Air Force, well, it'll be in the developmental categories then, that will be very readily visible to promotion board members when they're meeting the board. Incentives from an individual perspective is 2-year assignments where we can, and that was laid out in the program description guide. So USAFA, they wanted to keep to 3-year tours. Also, recruiting wanted to keep to 3-year tours, but several others were allowing 2-year assignments, because what we were hearing from officers, from all of you, was, hey, I'd love to do this stuff, but I don't know if I want to do it for 3 years. I feel like that's too long out of my career field. I want to kind of do this for maybe 2 years and then come back to my career field. Anybody, does that resonate with anybody? Yeah, a couple people. And so that was an incentive that we were able to coordinate with our stakeholders out there, say, hey, I think we'd get more volunteers, more people interested in doing these roles if it was a shorter duration. So we were able to accommodate that in many cases. Alma mater preference, you have there listed where we can. Also, follow-on assignment preference. So after completing a successful 2 or 3 year tour in these jobs, the idea is that you will have follow-on assignment preference, so that when you're in that VML cycle coming out of these roles, is that you will have a bump up over a normal officer rotating at that time. So that's the idea behind it, right? I mean, not necessarily above people coming from a 365 or a short tour, right? But definitely a bump over an average officer PCSing, because you have volunteered to do this in support of our institution, and so we're giving you preference on that on the back end. And while you're in those roles, being exempt from deployment. Any questions on this? Yes, sir.
I pile on this one. Okay, here's the deal, right? Ultimately, we need you, all right, going out and doing this job, going out and doing these duties. This takes you out of core, okay? So you're not going to be in core. The big fear is I'm going to go out and do this, I'll be out of core, and they're not going to want me back in my career field, and I'll never be a DO and a squadron commander, okay? That is absolutely not the case because of what you got up top, all right, in the institutional incentives. The Commandant of the Marine Corps was a recruiter, okay? How many of you have done recruiter duty? How many of you done ROTC instructor duty? Look around the room, right? We haven't done that. Are we building our foundation of our Air Force by not putting the right folks in recruiter, instructor duty, those type of things? I think we're doing a poor job across the board as the Air Force. That's why we're looking for volunteers and the right people to go in and do this. So you take those enterprise incentives that are up there, all right? The RPA community, all right? The remotely piloted aircraft community. That, for example, they were getting promoted at 60%, whereas the rest of the Air Force was 75 to 80%. Why is that? I don't know. We were not incentivizing it correctly to go out there and do RPA duty. The secretary put in her memorandum of instruction on promotion, going, hey, you will, as a board member, when you see an individual that has done RPA duty, take that into account and effectively promote them at or above the line of the Air Force average, all right? So we put that in a couple of years ago for the RPA community. The RPAs are now promoting well above the line of the Air Force average. Why? Because we put that incentive that we're talking about up top right there, okay? So we're looking to take that out of the Secretary's MOI because we've normalized it. So that's the key for you guys going into this. If you guys really want to do this, and we want you doing that, is that we have to have follow-through in the Air Force 2 to 3 years from now when you volunteer to go in and do this, that we put it in the Secretary's MOI. We've also given you those in personal incentives. Because if we don't do that, how many volunteers do you think we're going to get? 0, right? So I guarantee you that follow-through is going to happen from the Air Force, and then the individuals that are going in there, that will start going in here now, at least through starting through this summer, take a look 2 to 3 years down the road, and are they promoting at or above the line of the Air Force average, and I think you'll see that. The other part to that is in the developmental category side of the house, which we're going to, and Colonel Boyd's going to talk to here in just a minute. There's a career field briefing that will go in there. And in that career field briefing, the expectation is that it will be mentioned about that they value instructor recruiter duty in every one of our career fields that are out there, okay? So that when they come into the promotion, that's labeled and put in there. Make sense? All right. So if you really want to do it, I'm telling you, is to go out there and make sure that you volunteer to get it done.
Yes, sir. Thank you. And next slide. So just to give you an idea, I already kind of mentioned how we'll be closing up this year's process on the Thanksgiving, but hopefully before Thanksgiving is our plan to have the release out by then. But for CY20, which are for report no later than dates in the June 21 to May of 22. So lots of lead turn on this. This is great. So people are getting advance notice big time on this, how we're going. But we're moving it slightly to the left to answer your concern. We're going to have our board nomination process and our board actually meeting earlier. We're kind of lifting and shifting it to the left a little bit in order to deconflict even more with our 2-cycle assignment system that we currently operate under. But if you're interested in doing this, this is good for your planning purposes, especially if you have DEROSs in those RNLTD months there for CY20, something to think about, because it is something that our Air Force is really emphasizing right now, as General Toth talked about. Okay, next slide. So let's transition to 2-line PRF. I saw a few hands come up in the air when I asked if you heard about it, but what have you heard in terms of why we even went to a 2-line versus a 9-line? What have you guys been hearing? Yes? No one looked at the 7 lines? Okay. What else have you heard? What was that? Getting rid of the fluff? Okay. Anything else? In terms of the why we went to it? Yes. He was saying making sure, putting more emphasis on the OPRs that are supposed to support what's in the PRFs, right? Making them look at that. Great. What else? Anything else you heard about it? Okay, so those are all great. And, again, you see some of these bubbles up here. It's like, these are things that our officers shouldn't be thinking, shouldn't be worried about, right? About, I hope my boss is a good writer, and what's the format, and what's the trick, and what's the secret. It should be all about performance. It should be all about the people, promoting the right people instead of these other things that our officers and our people who are writing these were thinking about. Go ahead and build the slide out, please. So the idea behind this effort, which happened this calendar year, was to refocus on the officer's promotion potential and to enhance the senior writer's voice to the board. Because like one of you mentioned, a lot of fluff, those other 9 lines extraneous. What most board members who I've sat on boards, what I focused on was the senior writer's voice, which is typically in that bottom line, right? As telling me what's the bottom line about this officer and why should they get promoted. So that's the idea. So it takes away pushes for jobs and developmental education. It's not, because that's not what this is about. There's other processes for that. This is a focus on their competence and their character and where they rack and stack with regards to their peers that are eligible for promotion as well. And so then and then also with this change came for PRFs, promotion recommendation forms only, is very specific stratification guidance. So stratification guidance that applies here doesn't necessarily apply to OPRs yet, but as we talked about at the beginning, we're going down this road, right, of reforming the OPRs as well. We're starting with the PRFs, and we're giving very specific stratification left and right limits. First one is primary stratification against officers that they're eligible with in the zone. Number 1 out of 15 in and above the zone eligibles. That's a primary stratification. Number 1 of 15 below the zone officers. That's another. If that happens on that bottom line of the PRF, then you can do secondary stratification, which is a much more broad group, but it's on only very specific authorized peer groups that are allowed. And we'll have a slide on that. Next slide. The feedback we're getting, just so you know, we've had some management level reviews that have occurred, and we also have had central promotion boards that have happened using this new 2-line PRF format, and it's overwhelmingly positive. They love it. It's clearly delineating that senior rater's voice like we intended. It's limiting that all that gamemanship and the fluff and all that kind of stuff. It's just, and to your point, sir, getting them into the records, which is ultimately what should determine the job performance going forward. And it's making those apples to apples comparisons, right? Some people have pushed back really hard, senior raters. They don't like having to say maybe 6 out of 8 in and above the promotions or ineligibles. But or others don't like, I'm only 1 of 1. What is that? But it's giving a very clear picture as a board member. I can tell you, you wonder it anyway. This forces you to put it on paper and take away the questions because it's right there. And then the administrative time, it's not the reason we did it. But doing a 2-line PRF, for those of you who have done it before versus a 9-line, way easier, right? And so these are all goodness. Next slide. I talked about, again, this stratification guidance. These are the authorized secondary stratification peer groups. Grade, joint grade, command position, duty position. And this guidance is out there on MyPERS and also through your Force Support Squadron. So just wanted to lay this out. Any comments or questions or other feedback on the 2-line PRF, because that's my last slide on that. Okay, good. Next slide. So next to developmental category reconfiguration. Next slide. This is the bluff, the bottom line, up front. This is now the way going forward, our field grade officers will be considered for promotion to the next higher grade. These are the new developmental categories. The top portion above the bold, dark black line there, those 6 new ones, those will be effective with the March 2020 board. So you look for your own AFSC up there. That's how those are the individuals, those AFSCs, or who you'll be considered with when you're up for promotion to major, lieutenant colonel, and colonel. Have you guys seen this before? There was a question in the meeting post, have we done this yet? We were talking about it for several months. I mean, this is not just a flash in the pan, something we just came up with and we're implementing it immediately. It was talked about over several months, multiple coronas, multiple town hall briefings, lots of feedback, 2 mock board processes to test it out, not only how we're grouped, but also the promotion board results also. We did lots and lots of looks at this from many different angles, and senior leaders determined that going forward, even though our promotion process up to this point has gotten us great results, in order to have the most lethal fighting force going forward, we need to unlock the developmental agility that this gives us so that we don't have a one-size-fits-all promotion track. This allows us to value different things in these different developmental categories that we have going forward, just like we have had for many, many years with our medical side and JAG and chaplain. Any comments or questions on this? Yes? Well, I think I'm going to defer to General Toth on that one.
What do you mean? Yeah, okay. That's probably where I figured you were going down the road on that, right? Ultimately, as we promote officers today across the board, right, and you look at it, say the promotion rate is at 80%. As you look at every single AFSCs, some AFSCs on 1 year will promote slightly below that line. So it might be at, what did I say, 80%, 78%, 76%. Other career fields promote at 80, 82%, right? So you get this balance. The next year they're going down. When you look at the average across time, all right, everybody effectively over time promotes about the same rate. As we did the mock promotion board and you looked through that, what we did in there is what we set as a standard was an 80% across each one of the particular career fields, okay? And so we put it at 80%, and that's ultimately how the core groups promoted. One of the issues that we ran into, right, was the below the promotion zone rate. As you take a look at these things, and in the mock promotion board, as we did it, okay, what we've seen in the past is that the aviation career field individuals promote at a higher rate below the promotion zone than most other career fields out there, and promote below the average when it's in the promotion zone. Okay, that's what we found. When we broke out into the categories in there and we set a standard across the board, we just kind of set it at 10% across the board. There were a couple of career fields, right, that on the norm didn't normally get that many individuals promoted below the promotion zone. So they went from, I think it was about 3 to 15. All right, eyes of those career fields lit up going, hey, we're going to get a whole bunch more folks getting promoted below the promotion zone. In fact, that's not how we're going to work through the process, all right? We're going to establish the requirements across the board. And as you look at each one of these categories in here, we're going to look at the requirements for those particular categories. And we're going to say, you know what? For the air operations, special warfare, Lion of the Air Force, Alpha, the promotion rate across the board is going to be 80%, if that makes sense. Hey, we need more space folks out there this year. So we're going to set that promotion rate at 82%. You know, nuclear, maybe the same at 80. Maybe information warfare is down there at 78%. So we're going to balance those when the first board comes out in order to meet the requirements of the Air Force. So the expectation is when all said and done, we're going to promote the same effective amount of people that we did in the past. All right, we just will focus a little bit more on the developmental side of this. All right, we used to draw a 1 to N list, and that was it. So if I needed 10 PA officers and only 7 were above the line, then we've only promoted 7 of those particular individuals. Now, as they're out in a category, we'll be able to also put a floor in, all right, to say I need 10 PA officers. And if there's 13 that are promotable at that time, and we get 10, so be it, and that's great. If there's only 10 that are promotable, the chances of all of them getting promoted is slim. Why? Because most of them, 1 or 2 may be not fully qualified for whatever reason, and then we'll only promote to 9 or so. But we can put floors in as required for particular AFSCs in there. Okay, that will enable us to move towards the requirements too. I don't know if that answered your question in a long-winded way. The next follow-on discussion is something we're working through too as well is when do we go away from below the promotion zone, all right, to where we just go and take a look at a zone. So ultimately you enter a zone. You guys aren't aware, but a long time ago, all right, back in the beginning of my career, we used to promote majors below the promotion zone. How many do that? A few, all right? 2 years below the promotion zone. What we ended up doing was doing away with that, and we effectively shifted all majors to the left. So on time now was 2 years below the promotion zone initially. So where could we effectively do this? The next place we could take a look at it is to lieutenant colonel, right? We still promote below the promotion zone in there. So now what do? We just say, all right, you enter a zone, and you can enter a zone for 5 years. You can enter a zone potentially for the rest of your career, depending. Some individuals will get promoted early in that zone. Some individuals will get promoted potentially right in the middle of the zone, all right? And some will get promoted later. That's okay, all right? Most of the other services do it that way. So what do you think? What's your thoughts on doing away, maybe doing away with below the promotion zone? Anybody got something on that? Or why we should do that? Or why not? Okay, if you do have something at the end of this, come up and talk to me, and we'll try to figure that. Does that answer? Did it get there or no?
Well, I was looking for a more specific answer of exactly, everyone can't be a winner, right? So there's going to be some losers. I'm wondering who lost
Yeah.
in the mock board. Which you don't have
Nobody lost in the mock board, okay? So, and it was a mock board to just try to get some of that data out there and go, okay, if that's what's going to happen. I just told you the aviation community typically promoted a lot more below the promotion zone, all right, and less in the promotion zone. So if we're going to actually normalize that, how do we balance that across the board when we actually set these floors? There's a line in there about retention. If folks promote, I could spend a lot of time on this. I don't want to. If folks get promoted below the promotion zone, retention is better, right? Okay, because we just think that, hey, that's the only way you're going to get to be a wing commander, and that is not the case. Okay, I'll tell you, there's plenty of folks that weren't promoted below the zone that are still wing commanders, but the retention's better. If you're in the zone all the time, retention drops off. If you go above the zone, then it really drops off really fast. So how do you balance that too as well? And effectively what it is going to be is focusing on the needs and the requirements and the development of our officers in the future. Make sense? Okay, I killed all your time.
No,
Go ahead.
it's okay. Next slide. So just some key steps. And we may have some people, anybody in here eligible for the next Lieutenant Colonel Board? Yeah, we have some folks that would be very interested in this slide. So the PRF accounting date was still the 4th of October. Guidance will be coming out with all of the board-specific guidance through our Personnel Services Delivery Memorandum, PSDM. That'll be coming out soon because, again, this change just happened. This was just released last week. So detailed board guidance will be coming out very shortly. And then all those things that you may have been hearing about, right? That updated Secretary of the Air Force MOI. You're going to be able to see that. The promotion opportunity, clearly depicting what promotion opportunity will apply for each of those now 6 developmental categories associated. The career development briefs, so a thing we didn't talk about yet, and it was new under this construct, is that before the promotion board reviews a particular AFSC's record, the idea is they will be presented with a career field brief, which will explain to the promotion board members the different major milestones and things we value in that particular AFSC. And after that is presented to the board members, then they score all of the AFSCs 1 to N of that particular AFSC. And as a prior board member, I can tell you that's pretty great. Scoring by AFSC is comparing apples to apples, and you score them all at once, and then you move on to the next AFSC. There's some real goodness there, because we used to score it by reverse social security number. So you'd go from one record that was a 38F, and think about what we value there, then you go to an 11F, and then you go to a 13 mic, and it was hard. You kind of had to reset every time you looked at a record. This allows you to kind of compare apples to apples and really be able to see distinctions between those records in a particular AFSC. So I think there's real goodness there. That's just my personal opinion. And the board members that did the mock testing of the boards agreed. So that's what we're implementing there. Also, that updated officer selection board format, which includes the officer instructor and recruiting special duty, for example, that'll be on this next board. So you see the other timelines. Any questions on that? Yes. Okay, great question. He asked about the career development briefs. So those will be primarily led by the career field manager, but they will all be approved by the Secretary of the Air Force before going final. So I know AFPC, they've been working with our assignment teams. We've been collaborating with the CFMs, the career field managers up at the HAF, for each of those different AFSCs and helping shape it. And ultimately, each development team chair, DT chair, who's usually in our case, it's the Air Force A1, who's in charge of all of our particular AFSCs. I can assure you General Kelly is approving the final board brief, right? But ultimately, every single AFSC will have a Secretary of the Air Force approved selection brief, career brief that will be presented to the board. Great question. Any other questions? How many? We have 5 minutes? 5 minutes left. Okay. Next slide. So if you had additional questions, and it's also out on YouTube, if you, again, didn't understand the why did we ever go to this developmental category thing, it's out there on our YouTube channel, a good 23-minute video that you can watch and get even more detail on it. Next slide. And we've really covered all of this, I think. So, General, anything you want to do? I think there was some joint spouse questions.
So Sharon's got to answer a question that came up, reference spouse employment.
Good afternoon.
Hi, I'm Sharon Sieber. I'm a division chief over civilian recruiting and staffing. And there was a question in the meeting pulse involving civilian spouses. So basically the question was, what is being done to improve the ability for the spouses in the Oconus area for employment so that they're not having to take just what's available, but more along the lines of what's in their career area themselves. So a couple of things going on. The first one is this does have congressional interest in it. It is a very high-level congressional interest on how our employment on our spouses are with our military members. So DOD and Air Force are also working on programs to get after this. There is the DOD Military Spouse Program, which provides preference to military spouses who have PCS to the Oconus area. That process is through the application. So when a job is announced on usajobs.gov, they exercise stating they are a military spouse and their resume, what their qualifications are for the job that they're applying for. But we need to take that another step further and look at, due to relocation or due to their increase in their education, they've now become qualified where they weren't initially when they relocated. We need to kind of look at how do we tee that up, how do we get you guys to a location where the spouse can also see employment. Those are all part of the initiatives that we're working on to improve that process. So hopefully that answered the question. But military spouse preference is the way to go right now.
Yeah, and the question came up there, is my spouse has a 4-year education, all right, or got their master's degree, and then we come overseas. I think this is what I've heard, and it was on the last Roadshow, and the only thing she can get is a secretary position, at a GS6 level. I mean, who's got that issue, right? There's probably several of you in here. And then it becomes a frustration level, right, between you and your spouse to go, okay, I followed you over here to get in or whatever, and I can't get the particular employment. And so what Sharon's saying is, how do we work through that process? Ultimately, they get preference, right? But for the non-competitive side, there's potentially an option, right, where they can go outside the line and give up their spouse preference and go compete. Now, the problem when you're doing that at a higher GS level or something that rolls, you're competing with everybody, and there's no guarantee that you're going to get picked up for that job position. So there's a trade-off. And the same thing that I've heard on the opposite side, right, for GS employees that are trying to get employed overseas, they go, I can't get a job overseas because spouses are taking preference on positions over there too as well. So we really got to work that fine line and that balance. And like Sharon's talking about, I'd really love to see if an individual is qualified out there, has the appropriate things that they actually compete in the competitive side and have a good chance of getting a higher level job, if that makes sense. Does it make sense to you guys? We got to work through it, though. It's going to take time to get us past that. Yeah.
Quite a bit longer, it feels like, than the average process of especially here. So I have a position that's been out there for over 100 days, some up to 200 days. If I get a spouse, she's only here, he or she's only here probably for another year to 2 years, kind of becomes that position.
Okay, so here's the deal, right? Don't have to wait until you can have a seat. You don't have to wait. Who's involved in civilian hiring? 1 or 2. I'm going to hit this quickly, all right? You don't have to wait till the position's over to advertise it. Number 1, you know somebody's going to be leaving 6 months prior, start advertising that particular position out there, all right? What's that?
Sorry, is that in writing? Because I got the exact opposite information.
From whom?
Sir, I up-channeled that through my chain CPO.
Okay, so that is not correct. I'll just adjust it, okay, and we'll fix it. That's why I'm telling it to you right now. Because I've gone on the road and I go, all right, how many think that you have to wait till the position gets open before you can advertise it? And we get 1 or 2 that are doing that now, and the word is still not out there. But ultimately, you're getting it from me, okay, is that you don't have to wait. So you know it's coming open, then you go ahead and advertise that position. Then the second part is, with your CPOs, okay, you said, I'm waiting 180 days. I'm waiting this long. Get the details from the CPO and say, okay, where exactly is this position? If you get the answer that comes back and says it's stuck at AFPC, all right, my thing that I want you to do is go back to the CPO and go, oh, really? Do you not have a database where you can see exactly where the particular position is in the process? And if they come back and go, no, we don't have that, it's called Civilian One Link, all right? And they can take a look and say, this is exactly where the system, where the RPA, Request for Personnel Action, is in the system. Yes, in fact, it's at AFPC, it's at this particular location. Oh, or no, it's actually between us and you, because they actually gave us a slate of individuals and we just haven't gotten those to you yet, all right? So I'd request that you go out there and do that, and then Sharon, we might have one or two follow-ups on this.
Just quickly, and One Link is not just limited to CPOs. If you want access, we will give it. Full transparency is what we're all about. So anyone that comes in and asks for access to One Link can get it. So if you want it, just let us know.
Okay. All right. How many folks are in here joint spouse? Okay, is this what we're covering? Is the joint spouse piece of it? Keep your hands up. Okay, how many of you in the last 2 years had your joint spouse assignment denied? Nobody. Oh, you did. Okay, details. But was it within the last 2 years that caused this, or was he just wanted to separate? I can't hear you. What's that? When you PCS'd, how long ago was that? Okay, 16. So that's not the last 2 years. Okay. Well, now you're adjusting the numbers on me. Okay. But did he separate because we couldn't get him a job here? All right. So that's the key, right? Is we're doing the best job that we possibly can, all right, to keep you guys together. We're at about a 98.5% rate right now on joint spouse. And somebody was in here. I was just talking to him earlier, right? It's married to a Marine. Where are you at? She's in here. Okay. And guess what? They're on a joint spouse too as well. So we're working mill to mill. When we say mill to mill, that's all services too as well. We're also trying to work total force, so guard and reserve, a little bit more difficult, and to the point that we're looking at foreign service too as well. We've actually kept a joint spouse together with an individual that was a U.S. member and an Italian Air Force. We were able to get them back together there too as well. So if you are having problems with that, there are only 2 folks in this room right now, right? Hoagie, raise your hand. That can say no to a joint spouse assignment. That's me and Hoagie. So the goal is to continue moving forward. Okay, those of you, raise your hands again. Okay, all of you, joint spouse. All right, look around the room. That's quite a few. Normally we don't have that many. So for those of you not joint spouse, there's well, that's not fair that they get their assignments and then we don't, and we have to fight for you. I will tell you, across the Air Force, the numbers are not that high for the joint spouses that we can work everybody's assignment and try to get the best matches for all across the board. Okay? Sound good? All right, is there anything else? Is there another one? We are out of time. Ultimately, if you've got a couple of other questions that you want to bring out, who's got a burning question? Yeah.
Sorry, one more civilian for the question for my spouse. I thought I was going to be in January. She was told she couldn't fly the job because she was on island. True statement or false statement? Did that bring the limit back to those 6 months?
Okay, so she can apply at any time. However, to exercise that preference, she has to be within 30 days of reporting, of your report date. So 30 days prior to your report date.
So using the preference, right?
To exercise the preference. But like General Toth talked about, just applying and being competitive and not exercising that preference, that can happen at any time and they can get picked up at any time. But to say that they are a military spouse exercising preference due to your relocation, 30 days prior to your report date, sir.
And then the other part of that, right, if they do the competitive piece and they get picked up for it, all right, that window of when they can report, all right, is workable. Let me just put, I don't know if that, negotiable. Yes, that's the term that we try to use, right, versus workable. Okay, I think that's it that we've got for you guys. We'll be hanging out here. We're going to do the civilian roadshow, but hopefully you guys got a little bit out of it and you have a great rest of the week, okay? Thanks for coming out.